Before the Chaos Dwarf DLC, I showcased a Fimir Warrior build sent in by Mr. Teufel, featuring these monstrous infantry breaching enemy frontline with their armor sundering. And in the Chaos Dwarf DLC patch, these guys are actually a good unit now, especially into the Chaos Dwarfs themselves, with a total of 45% missile resistance from the Mist ability, as well as the Scalia skin of 25% missile resistance. And if you give them the Skinwolf Warrior's Ruinous Flash ability, they will have a total of 55% missile resistance, helping them to shrug off even the most devastating armor-piercing fire in the form of blunderbusses. For the rest of the army, we have the Marauder frontline 3 units only, because the Fimir Warriors are quite expensive indeed, and at the back 3 Marauder Hunters with javelins to shoot down Bull Santos. And then on the flanks we have some mobility in the form of Norscan Warhounds and Skin Wolves. Leading the army, a Skinwolf Warrior Wolfric the Wanderer with his full kit, as well as a Shaman Sorcerer of Death, coming in with Soul Blight for more armor debuff, as well as some Spirit Leech. As for the Chaos Dwarf army, we have a front line of pretty tough infantry in the form of Blazing Beards and 2 Chaos Dwarf Warriors, being rather narrow here since the Chaos Dwarf infantry are quite expensive. At the back, a couple Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses, and there are some goblins and hobgoblins surrounding them. A single hobgoblin cutthroat and a couple goblin laborers just to boost up the numbers and widen the formation. And on the right flank, 3 units of Bull Santoranders with great weapons, providing some solid anti-large armor-piercing damage, great against any kind of monsters from Norsca, really. And in the skies, leading the army, Drazoaf the Ashen, coming in with quite a few spells in the form of Ash Storm, Curse of Hashut, and also Flames of Asgore. And that's it for the army builds. Now let's get the battle started. At the start of battle, I'll be moving up the Fimir Warriors, trying to use them to capture my opponent's attention, so that they will be using the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses and possibly the explosions on the Blazing Beards to chip away the health of the Fimir Warriors. And at the same time, the Fimir Warriors will be able to rely on their 55% missile resistance and mitigate the incoming damage. The Curse of Hashut is dropped onto Wolfric the Wanderer, but the damage from the spell isn't exactly the greatest, and instead I'll be countering with a Spirit Leech on Drazoaf himself. Cinder Breath dropping in a breath attack onto the Marauders, incinerating quite a few of them, while the Fimir Warriors taking some hits, a full volley from the blunderbusses, but the damage is actually rather minor, all thanks to the missile resistance. Bull Santoranders trying to overload my left flank. I'll be sacrificing some Warhounds and the Skin Wolves to block them up so that my javelins can crossfire into the fray. Now, after shrugging off a second volley of blunderbuss fire, the Fimir Warriors have engaged in the front line. This is where the armor sundering synergy activates, as I drop down a Soul Blight, debuffing the armor of all the units in the vicinity. The Chaos Dwarf Warriors down to 25 armor, even the Marauders can start doing some minor damage to them. At the back there, we have some Skin Wolves and the Norscan Warhounds getting onto some of these blunderbusses, but unfortunately a second unit of blunderbusses was able to turn around and shoot them down. And the Skin Wolves will be broken off, all thanks to the Blazing Beards and the Drazoaf the Ashen. They do have fire damage. The Skin Wolves do have 20% of fire weakness due to their regeneration trait, so they'll be taking additional damage in this melee engagement on top of the Overwatch fire. However, good news is that I have broken through the cutthroats, and some of these Chaos Dwarf Warriors are quite beaten up, having their armor constantly debuffed and being hit by armor-piercing anti-infantry attacks of the Fimir Warriors definitely did not help them. The Fimir Warriors, one of them are able to get onto the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses, but with the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses able to station in guard mode and fire while the frontline units are in melee, the Fimir Warriors will still be taking massive damage, especially now that their leadership is dropped below 50% and from the Mist ability is deactivated. However, over here, I'm able to pin down Drazoaf the Ashen here, using Hunter of Champions plus the armor sundering from the Fimir Warriors to lower his armor down to merely 20. At this point, even the puny Norscan Warhounds can damage the mighty legendary lord on his Bale Taurus, especially when he's still grounded by all the Norscan units. And with Wolfric the Wanderer popping Sword of Torgold, if he managed to get a hit on Drazoaf, it will be doing massive damage, but unfortunately he was stuck on his own troops, so the Skinwolf Warrior will be doing the damage for him instead. Over here on the back line of my army, the Bull Santoranders have managed to broken through all my Skinwolf defenses, shut down actually 2 units of the javelins, but at what cost? While they're busy stuck on fighting other units, the javelins have been firing the whole time and destroying all these mobility of the Chaos Dwarfs, while my front line are just plowing through the Chaos Dwarf infantry and their backlines here. The second unit of Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses has now been shut down, and the first unit that has been routed earlier, despite crossfiring into the fray, I'll be activating the Skinwolf Warriors soon to chase them down. And another Spirit Leech coming in onto the Bull Center Renders, chipping away their health a bit more. But that exposes the Shaman Sorcerer of Death to the attacks of the Drazwav the Ashen. Unfortunately, I was trying to use him to plug up the gap in my front line and maybe slow down the advances of the Chaos Dwarf Warriors. But that also separates him from my most powerful melee fighters, Wulfric himself, the Fimir Warriors, the Skinwolf Warriors. All of them were pushing up trying to shut down the powerful blunderbusses. As a result, the Shaman Sorcerer of Death will be hunted down and I'll be losing my magic support. But at this point, the balance of power is in my favor, as most of the bull centers are heavily depleted. There are still some of them chasing off some routed Marauder Hunter with javelins, but as soon as I can get another javelin onto them, their HP will be lowered even further. Drazwav has been pursuing my Shaman Sorcerer of Death, and now with him being broken and shattered, he'll move on to other parts of my army. While over here the Blazing Beards have returned, they are fighting valiantly, but unfortunately for them, despite their flaming attacks, they are not exactly great against the Fimir Warriors with their armor debuffed, with the armor piercing on the Fimir Warriors as well, and of course, with the lack of fire weakness on all of these units other than the Skinwolf Warrior, and they will be overwhelmed by a warrior charge from the Norskin Warhounds and the Skinwolf Warrior himself. Not far away from them, the blunderbusses routing away from combat, I'll be using the Fimir Warriors and some regrouped Skin Wolves to chase them down, giving some time for the Skin Wolf to regenerate as well. Now, on the far side here, all my javelins are gone, but at this point they have done their job, shutting down one unit of Bull Centers, severely damaging the two other. In the skies, Drazwav the Ashen has suffered significant damage over time, and he will be less of a threat in the final engagement, while I'll be chasing off whatever I can, just really trying to shut down those possible missile pressure from the Chaos Dwarfs. Now let's fast forward a bit here as I'm trying to regroup with my forces who are pursuing the blunderbusses, while the rest of the Chaos Dwarf army are trying to get an engagement as soon as possible, and with the Bull Centers being faster than Fimir Warriors, I'll be forced to turn and take this engagement. A little bit of Flames of Asco is dropped behind the formations of my army, doing some nice damage to Fimir Warriors, but most of the explosion missed the target, so not exactly the best spell cast. All kinds of debuffs are dropped into the fray, with Drazwav being hit by a Hunter of Champions and the Armor Sundering, while he himself responding with an Ash Storm. On the far side, my units are returning here as the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses are chased away far enough, so my mobility unit will be quickly reinforcing this final engagement here, using the Skin Wolves to charge the Bull Center Renders, using their anti-large to do some nasty damage against these powerful anti-large units, and more importantly, more and more bodies are thrown into the fray to saturate and support, as my characters were previously outnumbered with the Blazing Beards guarding Drazwav. More and more units will be thrown into this melee blob fight, Skinwolf Warrior being activated and the Chaos Dwarf Warriors charging in as well. They're still quite healthy, but I do have a strong presence of melee troops in the fray. Wulfric still have half health, while Drazwav is taking more and more damage in the engagement, especially with the armor-piercing anti-large Skinwolf Warrior, who still have Frenzy activated. This Wolfen hero is almost full health, unchallenged in melee combat so far, and will be finishing off the last bit of HP on Drazwav the Ashen, triggering army losses. Now let's have a look at the army performances, starting with the Fimir Warriors. This one did pretty well, earning back its value and also a chevron, getting some solid kills. They managed to sunder the enemy's armor, punch through their defenses, and also run down enemy infantry. The other one, not so much, as you might remember, I did sacrifice one of the Fimir Warriors to silence a blunderbuss unit. But overall, the most important thing is that they absorbed a lot of those armor-piercing fire just to limit their damage potential against my army. If they were shooting at, for example, say the Wulfric the Wanderer as well as the Skinwolf Warrior, they will be doing a lot more damage than they actually managed to do right now. As for the rest of my army, the Skinwolves did some okay performances, this one being sacrificed to the Wolves just to slow down the Bull Centers, allowing the secret MVP of this game, all these Javelin Hunters, to dish out the damage, shutting down those anti-large armor-piercing elites of the Chaos Dwarfs. while the other Skin Wolves did some pretty solid damage despite being beaten back by Drazov at the early game. They managed to heal back up and just run down some of the battered Chaos Dwarf troops. As for the rest of the army, this one Norskin Warhound did good, and the other not so much, as this was also sacrificed to the Bull Centaurs as well. And then there are a bunch of Marauders not doing too much here, as they're not exactly a match for the Chaos Dwarf infantry with the heavy armor and elite melee stats. For the characters, the Sorcerer of Death did some okay damage with the Spirit Leech. The Skinwolf Warriorkin plus Wolfric combo did some massive damage to Drazov in melee combat, shutting him down in the end. As for the Chaos Dwarf army, the Bull Centaur with great weapons did some okay damage, but unfortunately they got stuck on Skin Wolves and Warhounds for way too long, giving the Javelins a chance to shoot them up. For the Chaos Dwarf infantry, the Blazing Beards did some amazing damage with their explosives, as well as the flaming attacks just to shut down my Skin Wolves, who do not have the greatest armor. Chaos Dwarf Warriors, not exactly a great performance here, as they were constantly debuffed by armor sundering, being hit by armor piercing anti-infantry monsters, and just fighting chaff in general. While the Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses, as you can see here, only one of them earned back their value, the other not so much. A lot of their damage is limited by being forced to shoot into the Fimir Warriors' 55% missile resistance. For the Hobgoblins and Goblin Laborers, not doing much damage either. Drazov did great though, 2,700 gold worth of damage value, but unfortunately just not able to carry the game. And that shall conclude the battle replay. If you enjoy and want to see more, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And if you want to submit and showcase your own replay, feel free to drop by my Discord and send me a replay file. I'll be sure to check it out. And that's it for today's battle. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.